Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live, everybody. Hey, I'm Morris Lilienthal. I am super pumped about today's show. So, if you're like me, raise your hand when you get up in the morning. One of the things that you do is turn on the news as you're kind of getting ready for the day. Maybe you're having your coffee, you're getting the kids ready for school, and you're tuning into the local news to get your weather, get your, what's going on in the news, which is a lot here in the last year, and what's going on with traffic, and you're just kind of getting your whereabouts for the day as you get ready to start your day. And if you do that and you live in North Alabama, you're probably familiar with my guest today, Melissa Riopka. Melissa is with WHNT News 19 here in Huntsville, and she is one part of the morning show there. She's a co-host and anchor with Steve Johnson, and along with meteorologist Ben Smith. And so I am super pumped to have Melissa on. So a little bit of background about Melissa. She is a native of North Alabama. She's a graduate of Coleman High School. And Melissa, my brother, is a graduate of Coleman High School.
Woo, go Bearcats!
And go Bearcats! And I played Little League football there before my family moved out. And then she's also has a degree from the University of Alabama in broadcasting. So I'm sure her and Ben Smith are excited about Monday night coming up, the national championship game. And but she has worked in the broadcasting industry for over, she told me, almost 23 years now. And she is been in the Chattanooga market, the Birmingham market, I believe, and here in Huntsville. So Melissa, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I told you right before we hit record or started live. I'm nervous. I'm like actually nervous being on the other side. I told my son on the way home from school. I said, "Okay, guys, we gotta get a move on. I've got to go do this interview." And he said, "Oh, that's easy. You just ask the questions." I said, "Well, this time I have to answer them." He said, "Oh, that's the hard part." So he's right. I think answering the questions is the harder part.
Yeah, I think, the other way, you're kind of prepared and you know what's coming. Sometimes, in my profession, you don't know what the judge or the other side may ask. So if you're answering the questions, you're kind of in control.
Exactly. So thank you for giving me some perspective on the other side. Yeah, this will be useful.
It is. And we were talking before we went on, just kind of laughing. I think that makes you sharp, though. And I'm curious, having done that, this was something I know what to ask you, though. And I'll just kind of jump ahead. As somebody who's been doing live TV for 20 plus years, when you're the one sitting on the other side of the chair and you're doing the interviews or broadcasting the stories or the anchor in the mornings, are you nervous? Are you just kind of locked in and you, as long as you're prepared, you feel like you're ready for each show?
I think that there's maybe a little bit of adrenaline, but I wouldn't call it nervousness. It's more just you kind of go to that next gear when you see the tally light come on. And that's when kind of everything sort of goes into focus for me. And oddly, that's kind of where I feel more comfortable on that venue, because it's just us. It's just the camera. But if I had to, and have had occasion to during the years, speak to large crowds or in person, then I get much more nervous.
Yeah. I think that's natural. And were you growing up? Were you an extrovert? Was this something that you always aspired to do?
Well, no, I'm actually very introverted, which is probably why just my co-anchors and the camera I feel more comfortable with. I'm super introverted. But the writing, the news, that process, I always wanted to do that. My grandparents, we'd actually talked a little bit about this. I think my grandparents and my connection with them, they raised me. So kind of our television viewing habits probably weren't what most kids my age were watching. It was a lot of 60 Minutes. It was a lot of things like that. So I kind of developed a love for that early on, and love the writing aspect as well. And then there's something very, I think, personal about interacting through the medium of television that I like.
Yeah. Well, as I think a lot of people do, and then I said as we started out, and I'm not fluffing here. The first thing Shannon and I do in the mornings is we turn you guys on, and you guys are kind of in the background as we go along, and we're catching news tidbits, or we're seeing what the traffic is, or I'm trying to, on Wednesday mornings I'm gigging Shannon to see why she isn't teacher of the week or whatever, and doing, and so we love it.
You need a nominator.
Well, we'll see about that, and. But I'd say this too: you've got your co-hosts there, the guys that you work with. They've got plenty of personality too, so I know you have to keep them in check every morning, as I can tell from just tuning in.
They're the best. Yeah, Steve Johnson is. Sorry, I keep getting lots of news going on today. I keep getting notifications here. Yeah, Steve is terrific. been working with him for, it feels like forever in a good way, but just a couple of years. And Ben is just, I've never met anyone who had a bad word to say about him, probably because he's just the kindest person ever. But yeah, he's probably at home right now, steaming his houndstooth suit, getting ready for Monday
I
as
know,
we
isn't that great?
speak.
He's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I
he's a
really
huge fan.
enjoy
There's a
talking to
lot
him.
of football talk that goes on. A lot of football talk that goes on in the break.
I
Yeah.
bet. Folks, if you're tuning in and you've got questions for Melissa or comments or just want to say hello, please let us know. We'll try to get to those questions and bring those up.
Mm.
Tell folks, that maybe aren't in the market or don't really realize, what time do you guys go on the air? And I know it's early because I get up
Yeah.
early. And what time do
Yeah.
you have to get up to get there to get started?
Okay, so I have probably, like most, we call ourselves like AM newsers. Probably about at least 6, maybe 8 alarms set on my phone. The first one's set for 1:30. So on a good day, I get up when that first alarm goes off, and on a very bad day, I get up when the last alarm goes off. But either way, we're in the building by 3, and that gives us just enough time. I do our radio reports in the morning, so the first thing I do is start going through what happened overnight. I'm usually trying to turn my phone off by about 8 at night, so there's a lot that can happen in that overnight news cycle to catch up on, and then we're on air at 4:30. So that's just not a lot of time. It goes by like that. And
What time do you go to bed?
um, well, it's not when I probably should. Steve and Ben are always asking me, "Why do you stay up so late?" I said, "Well, maybe it's because I have 2 kids. That
Yeah,
makes a difference. That makes a difference, guys."
it sure does.
So by the time the kids are in bed and all the evening chores are done, lunches are packed, it's about 8:30, 9 o'clock. So constantly sleep deprived. Yeah.
When you're off, and if you get it when you get a break, can you sleep late, or does your mental clock go off that you wake up at
It
2 or 3 in the morning
it
every day?
I wake up Saturday, Sunday, wake up at about 1:30, 2 o'clock without fail. But then it's the best feeling in the world when I realize it's
You can roll
Saturday.
back
I
over.
can go back to sleep. I can go back to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I think a lot of people are like me. Now, I've had the privilege a couple of times. You guys have let me come in and do a couple of short interviews for some things, and so I've seen the inside of the studio. Now, I hadn't seen the new digs which look pretty
Oh,
sharp.
it is amazing. Yeah, when we start welcoming live guests back in right now, we're doing just as we're doing this interview right here. Most of our things are done remotely now, just trying to limit everyone's exposure during the pandemic. But yeah, you've got to come back and see it in person. It's pretty
Well,
sweet.
I'd love can you kind of take people, you were talking about coming in and getting there by
Mhm.
3, you know, I have a little bit of understanding, but really I don't think I have a full understanding. Walk us through what goes in just from a 10,000 foot view each
Okay.
morning of what happens and who's doing what to get things ready for you and Steve to kind of let everybody know what's going on that
Yep.
morning.
Absolutely. We have a terrific crew, and probably the unsung heroes of the newsroom are our producers who are in there really putting the shows together, building the shows, building the graphics. And for the morning show, those folks come in about 10:30, 11 o'clock to get started, because we've got a huge chunk of news that we do, 2.5 hours. So that's a lot of content. That's a lot of stuff to go through, because we try to keep as much of a focus on local as we can, while also realizing that when people are waking up in the morning, that there are things that they've been disconnected from their phone. They haven't gotten the alerts. So if there's big national, international news, we want to get that in there as well. Of course, weather is extremely important, which Ben produces all his own weather segments. We added traffic within the last couple of years, realizing that as Huntsville Metro grows, as our North Alabama grows, that's becoming more of an issue. We have some early morning drivers. People
Yeah.
get to work very early around here, and so that's why we moved the show to 4:30 a.m., which is something more markets have done, but not everywhere. But this is a pretty early rising crowd between
Yeah.
the Arsenal and the other industries that are supported here. People tend to get up pretty early. So we go on even earlier so that you can hopefully have what you need to know. But our producers are there working throughout the night so that by the time we get in at 3 a.m., the shows are more or less set. Our reporters, Ashton Hiron, and we've just had a new reporter join us, Samson Tamajani. We lost Jordan Daphnis, who we loved. She brought a big smile to everybody's face. She went to Oklahoma City. So sorry to miss her, but glad for where she's headed. But they get in about the same time. They start working on their hits, and but it's also very fluid. I mean, just because we have it set, a show set, and we go sit down, that doesn't mean that's the show that's going to go out, because things are constantly happening and changing, and we're
Sure.
adapting and adding things in and dropping other things and kind of responding to things on the fly, which makes it fun. That keeps us.
Yeah.
We're talking about kind of the nerves. I think that maybe that's where maybe not nerves, but just staying on our toes, because you never know what's going to, they talk to you through your ears, so you never know what's going to come in while you're talking.
Well, no doubt. Today's a perfect example, and I was
Oh,
telling
yeah.
you before we went live here on social media that I've been wrapped up with what I do for a living, and just kind of looked at my phone to see all that was blowing up and going on literally in Washington. Probably not the right term there, but what was going on in the news cycle, and if this was something that broke overnight, I assume you guys would be changing on the fly to report that
Yep.
to let everybody in the audience know what's going on.
Yeah, whenever we have new people come in or people who are just getting started in the business, one of the things I'll say, because I've become the old lady in the newsroom after 20 years, I'm the old one in the newsroom now. Is that a show's never really done. You just hit showtime. So you're always working until the last minute and working throughout, because it never really stops. But even saying that, I don't think anyone really. This year's just been so unlike any other, especially when we look at the pandemic and the impact it's having, on our schools. We were talking about our kids, on our businesses, on how we all do life. It's really been. There's nothing really to compare it to. So we're all learning as we go.
It is. It is on the fly, by the seat of our pants, to say the least, and it's very scary. And you've got it's kind of like politics right now. You have such divergent views sometimes on the pandemic, and you're trying to, and I assume in your position, that no matter what your personal beliefs may be, that you're trying to present the facts, and as Joe Friday would say, just the facts, and such that there are some people who may not say they're facts, but but I assume that's part of your role, right? I mean, do you, especially now, is more controversial and as polarizing as things are in our society with politics, and even now, even with the pandemic becoming polarized in some ways, that you guys are trying to present it, as best you can, right down the middle of the road.
That's probably been personally one of the more difficult challenges or changes. I don't know the best word. Words rarely fail me, but I can't really think of probably the best word to use right here. But I guess just maybe changes in the last couple of years is because I came into journalism at a time when I really felt, and still do believe, it's a calling, sort of like a public service. I'm never going to get rich, and that's okay. Working in local news, my first job starting out, I made, I think, less than $18,000. A lot of people I worked with, we qualified for food stamps based on how many hours a week we were working and what we were getting paid. And it hasn't really, it's not something, I think when people think about their news people, they think of, your network anchors. And certainly those people, it's a very lucrative career, but most of us are doing it because we love it, and we love our communities, and we try to do the best job we can. But we also understand that that these are emotional times for a lot of people. A lot of people are struggling, and so how we are viewed has maybe changed, and there's maybe a perception among some people that there's a bias, and I kind of feel like that might be due to the influx of cable news and the 24-hour news cycle, where the person you see isn't necessarily a journalist. There may be an opinion host or a pundit or a commentator or someone like that, and so when you hear someone voicing their opinions and stating them as fact, or them being interpreted as fact, and then you turn on your local television news, there might be that that impulse to think that, well, that's not necessarily true, or this person's biased, or there's just a distrust there, and that really that hurts, because I know how hard your local journalists are working. And while there are always exceptions, I would say I can't really think of anyone over 20 plus years who I've worked with who had a, quote unquote agenda.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think that's so true. And the other thing that I was going to kind of ask you a little bit about too, in 20 plus years, is how social media and technology has changed your role and your job. And before I let you answer that, I just think part of that, kind of thinking this out, that is part of that distrust by some people too, is because I know when I watch live streams or I see you guys share stories, boy, there's some keyboard warrior to pound it off and making a line of comments and you didn't have that 10 or 15 years ago. And certainly when you began into this field, that certainly changed and put a slant on it, and somebody sees something on social and they see it as truth, or they stretch it, and it's kind of like the old tin can where you tell it one time, and by the got the third or fourth time, the story's totally changed. Or like Shannon tells me in fifth grade, by the time it's made its way around the classroom, or she tells her parents a lot of times, Melissa, you'll appreciate this being the mother of a 9-year-old, she'll tell her parents sometimes, she says, I'll tell you what, we'll have a deal. I'll believe half of what they tell you about me at school if you believe half of what they say about me at home. Because don't think they're not sharing that at school.
Oh no, I have no doubt, and I shudder to think about what our kids' teachers have heard, and I just hope they have a lot of grace for us, because that's you're 100% correct. Social media has, I think, kind of changed everything. It's changed how people get their news, because it is a way for us to communicate with them through some other platforms. But it's also distorted. It's created a lot of distortion, a lot of noise, and it makes it harder to sort of filter things out. And I still really haven't figured it out. And I don't know if that's because it wasn't part of my life growing up, because I'm 44. Sorry, sleep deprived. I'm a sleep deprived 44. I had to think for a minute. So it wasn't something that I grew up with. So I'm still trying to kind of figure out how to use it and use it well. And for that, I love to see how our younger reporters are doing it and doing it well. But it's made it, I think, a place where we can connect, but it's also maybe brought out a little bit of ugliness. And I think probably anyone who's been on social media has probably experienced that in some form or fashion. And it's certainly true for us on air. And again, realizing that sometimes, just by virtue of being on air, that you are a target for people's anger. But I've noticed that the nature and the tone of that type of engagement has changed. Where before someone might send you an email, sort of criticizing your appearance. Now you might get a message, wishing you or your family harm, and that's hard. It's kind of it's sad. It's sad. Yeah, it's sad. Yeah. But again, I'd like to think that that's the very small minority.
I agree, and it is, and sometimes that gets more noise, and those who say covering bad stories or having to cover that, and those are the stories, and you guys have to cover that too. But it's also uplifting to see some of the positive things, and people, for example, with you guys at WHNT, with everybody supporting Jason and what Jason and his family have been going through with Brody, and to see all the positive, uplifting comments and prayers and support. So that's a positive side of it, certainly.
That was terrific.
Well. Yeah,
absolutely,
really cool.
And that's why it's like this much, and the vast majority is just overwhelmingly supportive. It's such a great. Sorry, these alerts are coming faster than I can get them out of the way. To see your lovely face.
I don't know about that, but let's kind of talk about something else that I wanted to talk about, and that's something that I think a lot of working professionals and especially moms, how are you handling the work-life balance? Talking about getting up at 1:30 or starting to get up at 1:30 and being at work by 3, and then I assume you've got a great team member, a husband there that's helping you get the
Yeah.
kids off to school and talk about balancing those things of all the responsibilities that you have in your job, and then probably the most important responsibility you have, and that's the title of mom.
Yeah, it's something's got to give, and
Yeah.
that's been, my kids have definitely been my greatest teachers, because pre-kids, and I'm still somewhat, well, not somewhat, they would say still very much this way, very type A, go-getter, perfectionist, do everything 100%. And you can't be, or I've learned that I can't be 100% on my mom game, 100% at work, 100%. I'm now the main caregiver for my grandmother, who moved in with us a few months ago. She has Alzheimer's and can no longer live alone in Coleman. So there's only so much of me,
Right.
and so many people who need me. And that's been a hard lesson to learn, is that I can't be, as much as I want to, I can't be perfect.
Yeah.
And so some days I really feel like I'm killing it on the mom game, and I've had quality time with them, and we've played, and we've gone for a walk, and even the dog got some attention, and my grandmother's feeling safe and secure, and but I didn't talk to my husband all day, or I had a bad show, or it's just every day is a, I haven't found the balance. And so actually, if you have any if you have any advice, this would be the point where I would say, what's the secret, Morris? What's the secret?
There is no secret. You can trust me, I'm a lawyer. And so I think the secret is to what you said, and that is to let yourself off the hook and understand that as a busy professional and parent and spouse, that there's a lot of give and take. And you've got to understand sometimes this is Morris's take on it now. This is my
Right.
tip from Mo, that you've got to figure out where you can push and not push at times. And some things, if you've got one certain thing going on that hey, I've got to really devote attention, and that's for me, and I'm sure for you, having a spouse that's there to support you and take care of, pick up your slack when you can, and vice versa. That's it for me. And the other thing that I've realized, Melissa, in the last probably 2 years was, if it's not hell yes, it's hell no. And that is when people are asking of my time and if it's not something that, it may be something I have a passion for, or something that I support. But if I don't have the time that I think it's worth taking time away from Wyatt, or from Shannon, or from the March of Dimes stuff, or from something else that I'm already 100% all in on, I just got to tell them no. Even if I support their cause, maybe I can support you by sharing it on social, maybe I can support you by a donation, or whatever it may be. I can't be on this board, or I can't come to this because I've already got other commitments that I don't want to take time away from. That's my thought on it.
No, I think that's spot on. And I wonder, though, if it's, as women, we have a harder time saying no to things, because I've seen that among some of my male colleagues, that they seem to have an easier time saying, no, I can't do that. So I wonder if it is maybe a mom thing, or I don't want to generalize or gender stereotype, but let me just, as a personally me, I have a hard time telling people no, especially if it's something worthy, or something that I think that I might be able to help in. But you're right. I mean, when you give time, whatever you're giving time to, time is, as it's in our family, it's the most precious commodity that we have.
Absolutely.
And so when you give it to one, you're taking it from somewhere else. And so even only sleeping, 4 or 5 hours a night, it's just, there's still not enough time in the day to get everything done. I keep my to-do lists are famous around the house. They're everywhere,
Yeah,
and there's
and
not
I
a day
heard
that
you
goes
have
by
a
that
lot.
it all gets marked
Yeah,
off.
yeah. No, I was going to say that. But no, and I think, when a friend of mine who's a busy lawyer told me one time, is that when he's asked for a commitment, he does something like this. He'll look at his picture of his family and say, is it worth my time? And then just look
Yeah.
at his family and just say, is that worth it? But I agree. I'm kind of a tender heart and do that. And that kind of leads me to something else. And that is, I know not only in addition to work, and your family, but you do a lot of nonprofit and you do a lot of volunteering, I assume, and getting involved. And that's kind of one way that I know you and I have met, and that is where you're out
Right.
emceeing events. I know 1 or 2 times at the March of Dimes you've emceed some events for them and been very giving of your time. I know that's something that you're personally passionate about, but again, taking away your time. Is it just something
Yeah.
that you feel like you're called to do and to give back where you can in the community?
Well, fortunately, a lot of it sort of dovetails with my work, so I'm able to, like you said, sometimes it's just sharing something on social. Maybe it's I have an opportunity to interview a nonprofit for the noon show and kind of highlight them or spotlight them or do a story with Make a Wish, which I love those guys at Make a Wish, or and then it turns into an MC or something like that. But yeah, it is a question of what's near and dear to your heart, and for me that is the things with the children. It is the March of Dimes, the Make a Wish, and has become the Alzheimer's Association. I had to weigh that pretty heavily. Was asked to be part of the state board right around the time that we were selling my grandmother's house in Coleman, selling our house, moving into a new house that could kind of fit everyone.
Yeah.
And I thought, is this the right thing to do? But I felt like it was. So we'll see if we can make all those parts work.
Well, you just keep pushing and moving the ball forward and using the
Yeah.
sports analogy and keep pushing. And sometimes it's fourth. Sometimes you got to go for it on fourth down. But seriously, I do appreciate you and WHNT for that matter too. That you work, the station you work with, allowing people things that I've seen that I know that are great causes, not just the March of Dimes that I'm certainly a proponent of, but other great causes like Make a Wish and Alzheimer's and other things that are need attention and support in our community. And I appreciate you and others at your station supporting those causes.
Well, thank
How
you.
does it, and I was asking you this before we went live, and as we get ready I want to be mindful of your time, just a couple more topics. How did, when you go out, do you get recognized? And I know you were kind of joshing that Ben Smith and
Yeah.
maybe Jason and Steve get more
I am.
recognized. But I mean, I know people,
I
I've
know
got to
Ben
say,
Smith.
no, I know you from somewhere, or I know you, and they just kind of maybe kind of walk up to you.
It's
And is there some awkward times where they kind of talk to you, or you feel like, yeah,
no,
I'm sure as a viewer, thanks for watching?
yeah, yeah. Um, I maybe it is because I'm an introvert, and certainly in the pandemic, nobody's really going anywhere. So
Yeah.
I just kind of have my little circle that I make with people that I already know. But I mean, yeah, when you go out, sometimes people come up to you in the grocery store and be like, "Hey, are you that lady from the news?" Or
Yeah.
I went somewhere the other day and someone said, "You really favor Melissa Riopka," and I said, "Really?" I think I'm a lot better looking than she is, and way younger too, by the way. But thanks anyway. But no, so
How
I mean, it
funny.
happens, and if it's a viewer, we're always glad to talk, and because that's who we're doing it for. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we get up, and that's why we give it our all and care so much about getting it right. Is for the people who are watching, because it's not just viewers. It's our neighbors. This is our community.
Yeah.
This is
This
where
is
we
your,
live. This is
you
where
live
our
here.
kids go to
Yeah.
school. This is where I go
Yeah.
to church. These are my people. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and we were talking before we got started that you and I were making some connections in the community with our office and with us and doing it.
yeah,
It's just like it's a small world that
yeah. It
you're
really
not,
is.
as you talked about earlier, you're not broadcasting from DC and we're watching it here or in
Right,
New York. You're here in
right.
Huntsville, and the things that you're reporting about are probably impacting you and your family as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
As we wrap up, I got to ask kind of favorite interview or story. Is there something over the last 20 something years? Is there somebody, that you've gotten to interview that you were just really jazzed and you just thought it was really cool that you got to speak or interview that person?
Um, okay, that's tough because my mind immediately starts spinning through all the interviews. I mean, of course there are the bigger names, or where you're like, oh well, yeah, I got that interview. Um, my deepest pleasure has just been getting to meet people like the stories that we've done with Make a Wish, getting to meet those children, getting to meet, because I really believe everybody has a story. You have a story. I've been fortunate enough to get to hear your story, or at least part of it. And so that's where my heart really feels. But as far as just like an interview that I thought, man, I could talk to this person all day. And unfortunately, it wasn't in person. It was a Sally interview, but Dolly Parton was hands down my favorite interview. As just, if I could talk to her for 8 hours, I would talk to her.
Yeah.
I see somebody in the background.
I love it.
Hey, buddy. Hey, I'm doing an interview with Mr. Morris.
Awesome.
Yes, you can go ride your bike. Put a shirt on.
I love it. That's
Yeah, it's
totally
cold
that's totally
outside.
my house. That's
Yeah,
totally my
so,
house too.
but yeah, she was terrific.
She is awesome, and
Oh yeah,
she's a hoot. Is really
she's
funny.
hilarious. I asked her. We were talking about. I think it might have been around the time they were doing something new at her theme park, and I asked her what her favorite ride was, and she said, "Oh, honey, I don't go on those rides." She said, "I'd be losing my hair and my nails." So yeah.
She's a hoot. Last one. Any funny or embarrassing moment? Anything where you slipped or you fell? I mean, you're going to misspeak every time you're on air. That's just part of it. But anything crazy that's just, oh my Lord, I can't believe that happened.
So that also is another one where there's just so many to choose from. We used to do these things. We don't do them anymore. But they were blooper reels. But this was pre-social media. So what you would do is. Back then, we didn't have our MMJs or our one-person bands. It was always a reporter, a photographer. And so the photographer always knew, never stop rolling. And that's where we got our Christmas bloopers. And I made more than one really good Christmas reel. Lots of falling. When I was in Chattanooga, took more than a tumble down the stairs trying to walk and talk. Not chew gum, just walk and talk at the same time. But probably the best one I've had in Huntsville that you're not going to let me live down. They always say, well, at least you said your name right whenever somebody will have a mess up. And that's me, because probably maybe a couple weeks after I started on the morning show, we have what's called a template. So when the rundown is loaded, that's what we read off of. It's a template that's built. So some things never change. And like, that's the start of the show. And it'll say, good morning. It's blank, fill in the date, whatever it is. And I had just taken over from Michelle Stark, and the template hadn't changed. And it said, good morning, I'm Michelle Stark. And so I said, good morning, I'm Michelle Stark.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. And that's not ever gonna get lived down. So, but no, I am not. I am Melissa Riopka, and you are Morris. And it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time, and I mean it. I feel like you get to know the people that you watch the news with here locally, and you make a connection with them. And I think I speak for everybody in our audience here. We make a connection with you three in the mornings, and appreciate you providing us valuable information and keeping us up to date, and knowing where I need to turn left or take a different route to work and whatever it may be, and keeping us updated. And I appreciate your work in the community and volunteering and taking time to do those things. And let me know if you find that work-life balance, because I do want that secret, but I think it's a never-ending struggle.
I do feel like this was false advertising, though, Mo, because when you said that, we'd be talking about work-life balance, I did think that I was coming on so you could tell me how to do it, and
I'm struggling and I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, and I don't think there's enough time in the day and some things fall between the cracks, and I just at my house there's a pecking order, and the pecking order is Wyatt, Shannon, and maybe Winston the dog, and then me.
And then
and then me. So that's kind of how it rolls downhill at our house, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much. And folks, if you don't make it part of your morning routine to tune into WHNT every morning, if you get up at 4:30, they're there waiting on you. And check them out online, and they have great news stuff. And the other thing I'll tell you that I do is I've got y'all's weather alert app. It's great. And so check out all the apps and social media. You can stay up to date on what's going on. Melissa, thanks so much. I hope you stay safe and your family stays safe during these trying times. Thank you.
Same to you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.